Hello, welcome to Strong Sense of Place.
In each episode, we focus on one destination and discuss what makes it different than any other place on Earth.
Then we recommend 5 books we love that took us there on the page.
I'm Melissa Jolan.
I'm David Humphreys.
We're going around the world, one great read at a time.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Strong Sense of Place. Today we get curious about U.S. national parks.
Oh, I saw a shooting star late last night. Yeah, she was pointing at the west coast, beaming like a street light.
Today in Two Truths and a Lie, I'm going to talk about the unexpected creatures that came this close to changing our parks forever. And then we're going to talk about 5 books we love.
I'm recommending 2 diametrically opposed books to cover all of our bases.
Okay.
A moving historical novel and a rip-roaring party of a horror novel starring a family of Bigfoots. Big feet, Bigfoots.
I'm sure somebody has an opinion on that, and we'll probably hear from them later. I read 2 books about people who thought, you know what would fix my life? A really long walk through a really hostile environment. Should they have prepared? Absolutely. Did they? Kind of. We'll talk about those choices. But first, Mel's going to bring us up to speed with the National Parks 101.
So let's go back down the 101 to the place where we begun. When the radio played soft and low and time moved like a song.
So working on this show gave me the same feeling I had when we were putting together our episode about outer space. It's amazing and overwhelming and beautiful and fun.
And vast.
Yes.
Like unimaginably large.
And it made me emotional over and over again. Apologies in advance for the way I'm about to spit facts like a 12-year-old with a new copy of the Guinness Book of World Records. The largest living things in the world are in U.S. national parks.
The big feet.
Not the big feet. Sequoia trees in California.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And Alaskan brown bears, which are the world's largest living carnivores. The deepest lake in the world is Oregon's Crater Lake, in the park that bears its name.
Yep.
And the highest peak in North America is Alaska's Denali, in the park of the same name.
And a lovely park it is, too.
Want to go the other way? Death Valley National Park in California has 2 superlatives. It's home to the lowest point in North America, almost 300 feet, 91 meters, below sea level. For context, that's the height of Big Ben or the Statue of Liberty.
Wow.
And Death Valley is the hottest spot on Earth. The highest temperature recorded there was 134 degrees Fahrenheit, 57 Celsius. And it regularly tops out at 120 or 49 Celsius.
It is hard to imagine what 134 degrees would feel like. We complain when it goes from 80 to 90.
Yes.
We've lived in places where it's gotten to 100 regularly.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about 30 more degrees after that. Yikes.
Unpleasant.
Yes.
U.S. national parks also represent every type of geographical feature and wildlife you can imagine. So, try to get a mental picture of each of these things as I say them. It will be like your own personal slideshow.
Oh, that's fun.
You
All
ready?
right. Yeah.
Mountains, mesas, and arches. Lakes, rivers, streams, and waterfalls. Forests, volcanoes, deserts, canyons, caves, glaciers, sand dunes, beaches, geysers, and hot springs. Fjords, rocks that are 270 million years old. Petrified wood, shipwrecks, coral reefs, wildflowers, and cacti. Sea turtles, wolves, foxes, and bears. Pine martens, mountain goats, panthers, dolphins and manatees and sea lions and whales, otters, iguanas, beavers, feral horses, condors, bald eagles, snowy egrets, blue herons, puffins, and big finish, the nearly extinct but back from the brink black-footed ferret, the rarest animal in North America. And perhaps one of the cutest. The National Park System, I call it the NPS.
Like all the cool kids.
Yeah.
I'm not just a nerd, I'm also an NPS aficionado.
It includes 433 national park sites all across the United States, Puerto Rico, and U.S. island territories. If you're talking about national parks proper, that is places that have national park in the name,
Okay.
there are 63 of them. But the NPS covers 20 different types of parks, including monuments, memorials, recreation areas, scenic trails, battlefields, that kind of thing.
Okay.
There is a massive directory online, as you might expect. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So, how did we end up with this natural bounty? The concept of a national park is credited to an artist. His name was George Catlin, and he was a 19th century lawyer, painter, and adventurer, because of course he was. You couldn't only be one thing.
No.
He specialized in portraits of Native Americans in the frontier. And during his travels all over the burgeoning United States, he visited 50 native tribes. And he worried about the impact of westward expansion on wildlife, wilderness, and the lives of indigenous people.
Yeah.
So in 1832, he wrote that maybe wilderness could be preserved by, quote, some great protecting policy of government in a nation's park containing man and beast in all the wild and freshness of their nature's beauty.
It all comes together now. He was a naturalist and an artist, so he liked seeing all of that stuff and he knew it was important, but he was also a lawyer.
Yes.
So he's like, we need to protect this stuff with law.
Yeah, there's a way we can get this done.
Yeah.
The first national park was Yellowstone in Wyoming. It was established by Congress in 1872. During the next 2 decades, some of the greatest hits of national parks came to be Sequoia and Yosemite, Mount Rainier, Crater Lake, Mesa Verde, Denali, and on and on and on. Then in 1916, President Woodrow Wilson created the National Park Service. And for the past 109 years, its rangers have been the caretakers of our natural playgrounds, with the mission to preserve them for future generations.
That's awesome.
If you've ever had a daydream about being a park ranger, it might not be too late.
Really?
The NPS has volunteer opportunities, internships, full-time and seasonal jobs, and this caught my attention. They have a special program for people 55 and over. I'll put a link in the show notes to all of that, along with this video that explains every type of park ranger job.
Oh, that's cool.
The NPS also has a robust artist in residence program for visual arts, dance, photography, textiles, sculptures, pottery, video, and writing. On the NPS site, you can find info to apply. And you can also learn about more than 50 artists creating art in national parks across the U.S. I had so much fun going through that archive. At Acadia in Maine, a writer made a cookbook of local recipes with really sweet illustrations. A musician is writing a symphony inspired by California's Lassen Volcanic National Park. Volcanoes inspiring a symphony?
Yeah.
A textile artist made quilts that capture the scenery of Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. I watched a video of her talking about it, and it made me a little choked up. I should also mention that the NPS has an on-staff historian. They're the keeper of the history, but they also get out into the parks where history took place, document current events, and interact with park visitors. Our current chief historian is Turkaya Lowe, the first woman and the first African-American person to hold the post.
Good for her. That's awesome.
Yeah, I put a video of her talking about her work in show notes. It just made me feel better about the world, watching her talk about the parks and what she brings to them and what they represent. Now is when I usually get excited about the fun things you can do in a particular destination.
Sure, but we've got a lot of them.
Well, I thought about doing a quick rundown of all 433 national parks, but even at 1 minute each, that would take like 7.5 hours.
Right. We'd be here a while.
So instead,
Yep.
I've chosen 5 specific things you can enjoy around the country. But bear in mind, most of the parks offer ample opportunities for exploring nature and learning history, while also feeding your soul with breathtaking scenery and lots of wildlife. I urge everyone to dig into the links in the show notes because there are so many extraordinary things to see and experience. But here are my top 5.
Okay.
Number 1, riding a sled down a dune in New Mexico's White Sands National Park.
Oh, sand surfing.
Imagine every swashbuckling movie you've ever seen with sand dunes that stretch to the horizon in all directions. Then imagine that sand is pure, sparkling white under a hard blue sky. That's White Sands National Park. The sand on a beach or in the Sahara is made of quartz, so it's a little gritty.
Right.
But White Sands is almost pure gypsum. It's smooth and silky, and even on the hottest day, it stays cool to the touch.
That sounds magical.
And although it's not slippery like snow, it can be sledded or sandboarded. According to the NPS, waxed plastic snow saucers work the best.
All right.
And conveniently, you can rent or buy one in the park's gift shop.
Nice.
After you glide down the dunes, you might also take a 5-mile hike along the Alkali Flat Trail, or enjoy a red and orange sunset stroll, or a moonlit hike led by a ranger who will helpfully point out native plants and animals.
Oh, that sounds delightful.
The photo of the moonlight hike is amazing.
Yeah.
The moon looks enormous. If sandscapes are your thing, there are 6 other national parks with dunes, and some of them are in kind of surprising states like Indiana and Colorado. All of that will be in show notes. Number 2.
Yeah.
Biking along carriage roads in Maine's Acadia National Park. This park is famous for its rugged ocean cliffs, majestic fir trees, autumn foliage, and freshwater ponds. There are 150 miles, or 240 kilometers, of hiking trails for all levels of hikers, and they go through the woods, along the coastline, up to the top of mountains. But I got pretty excited about the idea of biking on the carriage roads. There are miles and miles of roads covered in crushed stone that weave around the mountains and through the valleys. The roads were a gift from John D. Rockefeller Jr. He was a skilled horseman, and he wanted to be able to ride his horses or carriage deep into the island without worrying about cars.
Right.
So today, you can ride a bike or take a horse and carriage tour that follows the route he took in the early 20th century. The scuttlebutt is the best time to go is in the fall to enjoy the colored leaves and to hop on your bike near Jordan Pond. Don't let the name fool you. That is a big lake carved by glaciers.
Okay.
Then you loop around, and when you get back, you eat the famous popovers at the Jordan Pond House restaurant.
Oh, I love a popover.
I know. I saw a picture of one with ice cream.
Yes to all of that.
Number 3, visiting the tallest trees on the planet at California's Redwood National Park. Redwood is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an international biosphere reserve that protects nearly half of the world's old-growth redwood trees.
Wow.
Every photo of this place looks like an enchanted forest.
Yeah.
The trees dwarf the humans standing next to them, and they're surrounded by prehistoric-looking greenery, and rust-colored walking trails wind through all of it. There are 200 miles, 300 kilometers, of paths for walking, biking, and horseback riding. And there are all manner of programs led by the rangers: forest strolls, campfire stories, kayak tours, tide pool walks. But I want to go into a special area, the Tall Trees Grove. It was featured in a famous 1963 National Geographic article that turned out to be the catalyst for creating Redwood National Park.
Oh, I didn't realize the Redwood National Park is about as old as we are.
To visit the Tall Trees Grove, you have to reserve a free pass in advance, and there are only 50 passes per day.
Oh.
And the text about the hike warns that there's a pretty steep uphill climb.
Okay.
But according to Outside Magazine, it's well worth it to see a dense forest full of mushrooms and colorful lichen before dropping into the middle of a grove they describe as spellbinding.
I don't know how many times I can say that sounds awesome in this episode, but that does sound awesome.
Number 4.
Yep.
Exploring Kentucky's Mammoth Cave by lantern light. Mammoth Cave is the world's longest known cave system. To date, explorers have mapped more than 426 miles. That's 685 kilometers.
Yeah.
426 miles.
Underground. In the dark.
Yes.
Yep.
Including passages, rooms, large chambers, and crawl spaces.
Also, that suggests that there's miles and miles and miles that haven't been looked at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Guided tours include walks of various lengths, and for the very adventurous, an all-day crawling tour. The description says, lengthy amounts of time will be spent crawling through extremely tight crawl spaces and climbing through difficult areas. That is a hard pass for me.
Yes to the caves, no to the crawling around.
100%.
Yeah.
The most in-depth option is the Grand Historic Tour. It's a 4-hour trek that includes a bottomless pit and an abandoned tuberculosis ward.
It sounds like the Poe tour there.
Yeah, when I read about that, I joked, wow, I did not expect a national park to go gothic.
Yeah, and there we are.
And then I learned that they offer a tour called the Gothic Avenue Tour.
Oh, all right.
It got its name from rock formations that resemble Gothic architecture.
Oh, okay.
It's also one of the oldest parts of the cave open to tourism and includes signatures and other keepsakes left behind by 19th century visitors. You could also explore Cleveland Avenue. That one has tube-shaped passages and sparkly gypsum walls. Or the Domes and Dripstones Tour that starts in a sinkhole, passes through underground domes, and descends and descends hundreds of stairs.
Okay.
Here's the best part.
All right.
Some of the tours are offered in the evening and lit only by lantern light.
Oh, that's nice.
The tours that are offered change throughout the year. I'll put a link in show notes to the current schedule. Something else to note. H.P. Lovecraft wrote a short horror story called The Beast in the Cave about a man who has an unsettling experience when he's separated from his tour guide in Mammoth Cave. Maybe a little light reading before you visit. Okay, number 5, last one, best one.
Okay.
Watching fireflies light up the night at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. That park is found on the border between North Carolina and Tennessee. It's the most visited national park in the United States. It's mountainous and leafy. It has lush forests and streams and waterfalls and colorful wildflowers that bloom most of the year. There are special wildflower hikes, and part of the Appalachian Trail passes through the park. But I'm interested in the fireflies.
What makes the fireflies so special?
Okay, the park is home to 19 varieties, including the synchronous firefly. During their mating season in late May, they glow in a pattern of synchronized bursts as they search for their mates. The spectacle lasts for hours, and it alternates between lighting up the woods with twinkling light and then plunging it into darkness.
Oh, nice.
People who've seen it say the cool white lights are like magic, like shooting stars on the ground.
Yeah.
This all-natural light show has become so popular, there's a lottery to get tickets.
Wow.
The application fee is a whopping $1.
Okay.
And it generally opens at the beginning of May and only lasts for a week. And then a few weeks later, they announce who won the lottery. So if you think you want to do that, put it on your calendar for next year.
Once again, that sounds awesome.
I love a firefly in the yard.
Yeah.
I think it would be so delightful to see.
Nature's rave.
Yes.
Yeah.
One final note. Our national park system is currently under fire from the Trump administration. Even though national parks are beloved and supported equally by Republicans and Democrats, they are wildly popular with everyone.
Yeah.
The National Parks Conservation Association is a nonpartisan, nonprofit group whose mission is to protect and enhance America's national park system for present and future generations. It's an excellent resource for the latest news on what is happening right now. And they have information on the simple, fast actions you can take to let Congress know our national parks are important to you. Links for all of that and everything else I talked about and more will be in show notes. That's the National Parks 101.
2 truths and a lie. It's how you said goodbye.
Are you ready for 2 truths and a lie?
One was you'd
I will
miss
do my
me.
best.
One
I'm
was
about to say
you'd
3
try.
statements. 2 of these are true. Mel doesn't know which one is the lie. Statement number 1. Congress once proposed stocking a national park with hippos. This next one needs a little information. So there are many dangerous animals in the Grand Canyon. There are mountain lions and tarantulas and scorpions and coyotes, just to name a few. But the most dangerous animal in the Grand Canyon are bison. Statement number 3, Florida's fiercest eco-warrior didn't own hiking boots and once described the Everglades as, quote, too buggy. All right, so in order, statement number 1, Congress once proposed stocking a national park with hippos.
That's ridiculous. That's not true.
It is true.
Stop it.
Yep. So to really sort of get into the why, we need to go back to 1884. That was when New Orleans hosted one of the most over-the-top ambitious events in American history. It was the World Cotton Centennial Exposition. This was no local fair. It sprawled over 249 acres over what's now Audubon Park, which is just a stone's throw from downtown New Orleans. It featured the largest roofed structure in the world.
I love all the 19th century stuff that's like superlatives of crazy things,
Yeah.
like the largest roofed structure. Okay,
In the
good job,
world.
big building.
Yeah. It was also lit with 5,000 electric lights.
Okay.
I'm sure a jaw-dropping novelty at the
Yes,
time, right?
100%.
They lit up the night.
Yeah.
People arrived by train and steamboat and ocean liner to gawk at futuristic wonders like electric streetcars and elevators, and to wander through the lush gardens and the global exhibits. I suspect you could stand there in 1884 and see just a little bit of the 20th century coming around the bend there. So one of those exhibits introduced Americans to a plant so pretty it practically begged to be taken home. It was the water hyacinth. And at first glance, the water hyacinth is a lovely aquatic plant. It floats on the surface of freshwater lakes and ponds and slow-moving rivers. It's bright green with rounded leaves. It looks like a lily pad with bonus flare on it. And the real showstopper, though, is it has a lavender to violet flower, just like a delicate bloom that rises above the foliage like a little crown. So, of course, people wanted one. And the organizers made it easy. They gave out free hyacinths to anyone who asked.
Really?
Yep. What could possibly go wrong?
Uh-huh.
So lots, it turns out. The water hyacinth is basically the Viking raider of aquatic plants.
Uh-oh.
Yep. It is one of the most invasive species we know.
Oh, no.
It spread like wildfire through Louisiana's waterways, and it choked rivers, killed fish, blocked trade routes, and it turned entire ecosystems into floating green traffic jams.
That's terrible.
Yeah. People tried weeding them. They tried dousing them in gasoline and setting them on fire, and nothing worked. So if you remember the original statement, you can probably tell where this is going.
They did not think they were going to stop this with hippos. What, an army of hippos?
In March of 1910, Louisiana Representative Robert F. Broussard met with the House Committee on Agriculture to lay out the details for the American Hippo Bill.
I love it so much.
Yeah. His plan, 3 easy steps. 1, import hippopotamuses from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
2, let them loose in Louisiana's swamps where they'd feast on the water hyacinths.
What could possibly go wrong with that plan?
And 3, once they'd cleaned things up, we would eat the hippos.
No.
Yep. And that would solve the hyacinth crisis and a meat shortage problem in the U.S. at the same time.
No.
2 birds, 1 stone.
Come on. I just keep seeing the dancing hippos from Fantasia and the little pink skirts in my imagination.
This idea got surprisingly far.
come on.
Former President Teddy Roosevelt never one to shy away from a wild adventure he was in. The New York Times ran an editorial supporting it, praising the delicious potential of, quote, lake cow bacon.
No.
Yeah. One expert testified before Congress that hippo meat tasted like a cross between beef and pork.
I was going to ask if someone knew what it tasted like, and then I didn't really want to know.
Yeah, they do. People know. And then for a while, it looked like it might happen. Thankfully, it did not. Because as anyone who's seen a wildlife documentary knows, hippos are not friendly little lake cows. They are massive and aggressive and territorial, and they kill more people in Africa than lions and crocodiles combined. And
Wow.
Yeah.
Also, they can move shockingly quickly.
Yes, especially in the water. And just to really seal the deal, turns out hippos don't even like water hyacinth. So that would have gone just great. Today, more than 140 years later, Louisiana still spends millions of dollars every year trying to manage the purple-flowered invaders that started as party favors at a World's Fair.
What a story.
Yeah. Okay, statement number 2. You ready?
I'm ready.
The most dangerous animals in the Grand Canyon are bison.
I'm going to say true.
That is a lie.
Darn it.
It's going to take a minute to get there.
Okay.
So first, let's talk about danger.
Yes.
If you have ever stood on the rim of the Grand Canyon or even looked at a photo, you've probably felt that sort of dizzying drop in the sheer scale and the realization that there is nothing between you and the void except a little bit of wind in your own 2 feet.
Yeah. I don't like that feeling. That's why I stay away from the edge of deep things and tall things.
Yeah. And the Grand Canyon is breathtaking, but it's also one of the most deadliest parks in North America.
Sure.
There are rattlesnakes and scorpions, and mountain lions. There are sheer cliffs and dizzying heat, and the Colorado River down below that looks like a tiny ribbon from the rim, but it'll toss you around like a rag doll if it can get its hands on you. And people fall off cliffs, and people dehydrate on the trails, and there's a surprising number of air-related deaths over the Grand Canyon. There's an entire book about mortality at the park.
How fun.
Yeah. It's called Over the Edge, Death in the Grand Canyon, written by Thomas Myers and Michael Gilgary. It's a little dark, as you might expect.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're the kind of person who's morbidly curious about just how many ways you could meet your end at the canyon, it's worth a look. It's got 4.6 stars on Amazon after almost 1,000 reviews. So clearly I'm not the only one who couldn't look away. But here's the thing that gets me. The creature that sends more people to the hospital at the Grand Canyon than any other, it is not the snakes, it's not the mountain lions, it's not the bison, the largest land mammal in North America, 1 ton, 6 feet of fuzzy fury. It's the rock squirrel. It's the rock squirrel. It's that twitchy-tailed little punk is coming after our people. And it's kind of the perfect crime because rock squirrels look adorable.
Of course.
They are everywhere along the canyon rim. They sit up on their haunches like they're posing for a Disney movie. And they got little twitching noses and fuzzy tails and big brown eyes that seem to say, hey, friend, snack? And they work it. And tourists see them and they melt and they pull out a granola bar or maybe a peanut or even just lean in for a closer look. And that's when the rock squirrel makes its move. According to the National Park Service, the rock squirrel sends more people to the first aid station than any other animal in the park.
What are they doing?
Well, so people try to feed them or pet them, or they get a little too close with their phone for a perfect Instagram shot. And these squirrels, despite their fluffy outsides, inside, they're little teeth gremlins when they want to be.
Sure.
And they'll bite and they'll scratch. And there are some reports that they'll work together to get your food and leave you with an open wound.
Oh my gosh, naughty little squirrels.
Yeah.
But also, who tries to pet a squirrel?
There are lots and lots of videos online. And these are like sort of aggressive squirrels because they know the score.
Granola bars.
Right. And the bites can get nasty enough to send you to the hospital.
Ew.
The rock squirrel is known to carry bubonic plague, the plague. an antivirus, and rabies, which means that one little, oh, how cute moment can turn into a trip to urgent care for antibiotics or vaccines or worse. And yet there's something that's so perfectly human about the fact that of all of the creatures in the Grand Canyon,
Right? The ones that you would actually be afraid of.
the one we fall for again and again is the one with the big cute eyes. So, public service announcement, if you're headed to the Grand Canyon, resist the urge to make friends with the wildlife, especially the rock squirrels. Admire them from a safe distance. Snap a photo if you have to, but please, for your sake and theirs, don't feed them, don't touch them, don't lean in, because in a place filled with cliffs and cougars and rushing rivers, it is the adorable little squirrel that will send you to the ER. Third statement, which we now know is true. Florida's fiercest eco-warrior didn't own hiking boots and once described the Everglades as, quote, too buggy. So we need to talk about Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. She was an author and an introvert and the fiercest defender the Everglades has ever seen. In her 90s, she was still showing up to public meetings in Florida. She was a small woman in big floppy hat and dark sunglasses, and she would absolutely eviscerate developers and bureaucrats and corporations who wanted to drain the wetlands.
Good for her.
Yeah. And the life she took to get there was just wild and strange and unforgettable. She grew up in Minneapolis in the late 1800s, and from the beginning, her life was chaotic. Her parents separated when she was 6. That sent her to live with her mother in a situation that sounds like something out of a Southern Gothic novel. She lived in a house filled with tension and mental illness and emotional landmines. Her mother, a trained concert violinist, struggled with severe anxiety and depression. The two moved into Marjorie's grandparents' home in Massachusetts. Nobody got along there. The emotional strain was so bad it gave young Marjorie night terrors.
Aw.
Yeah. And so she did what a lot of bright, sensitive kids do. She escaped into books and then eventually writing. She went to college, she started publishing, and then she married a man after a whirlwind romance. There were only 3 problems with that relationship. 1, he was 30 years older, which I feel like they could have weathered had it not been for the other 2 problems. 2, he was a con man.
Oh.
And 3, he was already married to somebody else.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So Marjorie left him and moved to Florida, and she never looked back. She moved to Miami in 1915. At the time, there were about 5,000 people living there.
Wow.
Yeah. She described Miami as, quote, no more than a glorified railroad terminal.
Huh.
Her estranged father, whom she hadn't seen since she was 6, was the publisher of the paper that would eventually become the Miami Herald. She joined the staff as a society columnist. She covered tea parties and luncheons, and when there wasn't enough to report on, she made stuff up.
Awesome.
So for the next 7 years, she wrote for the paper, but eventually she left to focus on fiction. As she put it, I wasn't a good employee. I didn't like being told what to do. I didn't like regular hours, and writing fiction seemed like the perfect job.
Wow, I can relate to all of that.
She sold stories to pulp magazines, including The Black Mask, and 40 stories to the Saturday Evening Post. Her characters were often spunky, independent women, girls with moxie, and she wrote books and she wrote plays and she made her career work. So flash forward 20 years. She's in her 50s when an editor approaches her to write a book about Florida for a series on American rivers. They suggest she write about the Miami River. And she replies, the Miami River? It's about an inch long. But the research leads her somewhere else, to the Everglades. What she finds there, just scientifically and ecologically and politically, lights a fire in her. And here's the duality that I love. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was not an outdoors woman. She didn't like camping. She didn't like hiking. She described the Everglades as too buggy, too wet, too inhospitable. She once wrote, to be a friend of the Everglades is not necessarily to spend time wandering around there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But she was furious about what people were doing to it. Developers wanted to drain the wetlands and pave them over and turn them into farmland and golf courses and suburbs. And to most people, the Everglades was just a big, useless swamp. But Marjorie knew better, right? She saw it as a complex, interconnected ecosystem and fragile and essential, irreplaceable. So when she was nearly 60, she published a book that changed everything. It's called The Everglades, River of Grass. And it was sweeping, and it was lyrical, and it was packed with science and fury and love. It opened with a line that still echoes today. She wrote, "There are no other Everglades in the world." The book came out in 1947, which was the same year that Everglades National Park was established, and it fundamentally changed the way Americans thought about the wetlands. And she wasn't close to done. For the next 29 years, she was a relentless force. She gave speeches, wrote articles, she lobbied politicians and battled sugar corporations and showed up to meetings and shamed bureaucrats. She kept her phone number listed in the Miami phone book so people could call her with tips. One journalist called her a tiny, fearless woman who confronted bulldozers with a typewriter.
That's so cool.
Yeah. In 1993, at the age of 103, she was awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom for her efforts. She died in 1998. She was 108. 2 years later, she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame, where she was recognized as one of the most influential environmentalists in American history, which is not bad, really, for a woman who mostly preferred to stay in and read. So, the next time somebody calls the Everglades just a swamp, or you happen to be there and feel the wind stir the reeds in a Florida wetland, think of Marjorie. Think of what it means to love something fiercely and to protect it with words and to fight for decades for a place most people never thought to value. That is the legacy of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and we're lucky to live in its shadow. That is Two Truths and a Lie.
If you've ever shopped online, and let's face it, who hasn't? Chances are you've bought something from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes things easier, and not just for shoppers. They make it easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. It gives you a leg up from day dot with hundreds of beautiful ready-to-go templates to express your brand style so you can get up and running fast. You can tackle your important tasks from inventory to payments to analytics and more, all in one place. You can also spread your brand's word with built-in marketing and email tools built for you to find and keep new customers. And remember that iconic purple Shop Pay button that's used by millions of businesses around the world? It's why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. Your customers already know and love it. If you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. Shopify.com/realm.
$5 we love, but we carry them near. Dog-eared and dusty, but sweet and clear. From faraway lands of the hearts of home. $5 we love, no matter where we roam.
Bookworm.
My first recommendation is Shelterwood by Lisa Wingate. This is a mashup of historical fiction, adventure tale, and crime story set in the Winding Stair Mountains in eastern Oklahoma. That's where you'll now find the Ouachita National Forest and Horse Thief Springs Trail.
Horse Thief Springs Trail?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like something you'd hear in a cowboy story.
Today, it's an 11-mile hiking trail loop that winds through the trees and crosses streams along the face of Winding Stair Mountain. But parts of the trail follow logging roads from the 1920s. And going back to the 1800s, it was used by horse thieves to escape with their booty. So you were right.
That's fun.
So the trail and the forest, all of that wilderness is a character in this page-turning story. There are two timelines, 1990 and 1909. The story unfolds in alternating chapters, narrated by two female characters with very distinctive voices. And every chapter ends on a big old cliffhanger.
Oh.
Like old school, if this was a movie serial, the hero just slipped off of the cliff kind of thing.
Are there literally cliffhangers? Because there could be.
I don't recall any of them actually being on a cliff.
Okay.
In the modern timeline, our heroine is Valerie. She's a law enforcement ranger, and she's just arrived for duty at the Horse Thief Trail National Park. Our girl is in a rough patch. Her husband has recently died, and she and her young son are eager for a fresh start. But she has been dropped into it at her new job. A local teenager has gone missing from one of the hiking trails. There's tension in the community between the local Choctaw tribe and the newly designated national park. And the remains of 3 young girls have been found in a cave deep in the forest. That's a lot for a new ranger.
Yeah.
Valerie's boss is more concerned with politics than the truth and refuses to investigate the girls' case. So they find these remains. They think they're old. They're not quite sure. He just wants to hand wave the whole thing away. But Valerie can't stop thinking about the potential tragedy that likely befell these children. So she decides to start her own secret, unofficial investigation. And she forms an unlikely alliance with a Choctaw tribal police officer along the way. This part of the story is a brisk police procedural with really interesting red herrings and good character development and Valerie's fish-out-of-water perspective. She had come there from the St. Louis Arch National Park.
Oh, all right.
Which is a national park, but it's concrete and elevators, not deep wilderness and caves.
It's literally in the middle of the city. I used to work a couple of blocks away.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So we get to experience the park as Valerie does. As she's getting to know her way around, we do too. The bits about local history and the landscape are very vividly drawn. I want to read you a little snippet. I am in the backwoods of southeastern Oklahoma, where after a rain, the morning shadows linger long and deep, and the mountains exhale mist so thick it seems to have weight. The countryside exudes the eerie, forgotten feel of a place where a woman and a 7-year-old boy could simply vanish, and no one would ever know. So that's 1990.
Yeah.
In the 1909 thread, 11-year-old Olive tells her story. It's a combination of big adventure and heartbreaking adversity. Her dad has died. She adored her dad. Her mom has become an alcoholic and opium addict. And Olive lives in fear of her new abusive stepfather.
Yikes.
When she realizes that she and her foster sister will never be safe in that house, the girls pack a bag with supplies and go on the run. So now there are 2 little girls all alone in the wilderness. Their evil stepfather is after them, and he has the law on his side.
And they don't know they're in the middle of a crime novel.
They don't.
Oh, that's horrible.
Those parts are really brutal. It's a really interesting combination of they are in very real danger from this incredibly scary man.
Yeah.
And they're action adventure stars, like trying to ford a river and hiding in trees and losing their supplies and almost getting run over by a car.
Yeah.
As you probably expect, the 2 timelines eventually intersect with each other. Dark secrets are revealed, and as much as they can be, old ghosts are laid to rest. I found all of that very satisfying. But I also learned a lot. The historical timeline is woven with real people and events. Oklahoma had only been a state since 1907, and children at the time were treated much differently than they are now. Kids could work 10 and 12-hour shifts in coal mines, so they put in 60 to 70 hours a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Former Native American lands were suddenly not theirs anymore.
Yeah.
So Olive goes on this grand adventure and becomes the de facto leader of a band of orphans called the Elf Children, which is a real thing. And she meets a woman named Kate Barnard. I'd never heard of her.
No.
She was a rabble-rouser of the highest order. She was the first woman in America elected to state public office. And she won by the widest majority of any candidate on the ballot at a time when women couldn't even vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. She became a champion of the elf children and advocated for child labor laws. Even though this novel is grounded in a story from more than 100 years ago, it has striking parallels to what we're experiencing today. And that makes the characters really relatable, even though their day-to-day life is so different from ours.
Yeah.
And I found the ending really moving and very satisfying. In our Appalachia episode, I recommended a novel called The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek. That's about the librarians who delivered books on horseback to isolated neighbors in the Kentucky mountains.
Yeah.
If you read and enjoyed that book, I think you'll like this one too. They're kind of cousins to each other. This one is Shelterwood by Lisa Wingate.
This is book 2.
So I mentioned this a little bit at the top, but for this episode, I read 2 books with the same basic plot. The plot is people who are completely unprepared decide to go for a very long walk in potentially dangerous places. And the books have a lot of similarities. There's a lot of talk about shoes, for instance, but they're very different stories and they're told very differently. And in each case, they walk away better people, but not before losing almost everything. My first is Wild, from Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail by Cheryl Strayed. So let me set the stage here. You're standing in a sun-blasted clearing on the side of a mountain in Northern California. You're dirty, you're exhausted. You've been hiking through blistering heat and over sharp rocks and through snow and dust for weeks. You're in your mid-20s. You've been dragging yourself both physically and emotionally through miles of wilderness because you've convinced yourself it's the only way to make sense of your now very messy life. And then just as you stop for breath, one of your heavy leather hiking boots, your lifeline, goes tumbling over the edge of a cliff. And you watch it go.
Oh, no.
And then you get so mad you take the other one off and you throw that one down after the first.
Of course.
and you're miles from nowhere. So that's how Wild starts. The book feels like sitting down with a friend who's ready to tell you about a rough, true story with all the feels. It's an adventure story. I picked it up because I was curious about the Pacific Crest Trail, but it's also, and maybe even mostly, a story about loss and forgiveness and the messy business of being hurt and trying to walk home from that. Cheryl Strayed was 26 when she made what she called a snap decision to hike more than 1,000 miles up the Pacific Crest Trail, known by hikers simply as the PCT. Again, not just a nerd. The PCT is one of the great long-distance hiking trails in the world. It runs more than 2,600 miles from Mexico to Canada. It winds its way through California and Oregon and Washington. And it goes through 25 national forests and 7 national parks and some of the most rugged wilderness in the United States. There are seemingly all of the landscapes. There's arid deserts and snow-capped mountains, alpine forests, meadows, and volcanic fields, and it feels like they're butted up right next to each other. It's not an easy trail. The terrain is rough. The weather is unpredictable. It takes most hikers 4 to 6 months to walk the whole thing, and fewer than half of those who start finish. Strayed was wildly unprepared for any of that. She had no wilderness experience to speak of, no training, no compass skills. She overpacked her backpack so much she couldn't stand up with it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Experts say your pack should weigh 25 to 35 pounds. She was carrying near her body weight.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. She had almost 25 pounds of water alone.
No.
Yeah, when she started.
Ouch.
And, why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Fear.
Well, her life had fallen apart.
Yeah.
Her mother had died suddenly of cancer, and her mother was just her core. She unraveled. She was married, but she started sleeping with anyone she could find. She experimented with heroin. She was drowning in grief and guilt. And she hit bottom and somehow convinced herself that the way back was to walk. Just literally walk it off. So she walks. She walks over scorched desert and up snowy passes and through swarms of mosquitoes and across miles of blistering heat. She loses toenails. She runs into rattlesnakes, bears, and a menacing Texas longhorn bull, and late in the trip, a llama. She meets other hikers who, for the most part, are just lovely, generous people, and she has one terrifying moment that feels like a sexual assault about to happen. But the real magic in this book isn't just in the scenery or the peril or the moments where sort of it all comes together. It's in the way she writes about the details of hiking alone, the failures and the fear and her stubbornness. She is so stubborn. She unwraps her grief, but it never feels overwritten. It feels honest. If Cheryl Strayed's name sounds familiar, it might be because this book was everywhere when it came out in 2012. It was a #1 New York Times bestseller. Reese Witherspoon bought the movie rights before the book even hit the shelves and then starred in the adaptation and earned an Oscar nomination. I watched the movie. The book is a good book. The movie is a good movie. They inform each other. Casting Laura Dern as her mother was brilliant. When she dies, it's just, like, you leave Laura Dern alone now.
She is a national treasure.
Right. And then, at least from my perspective, the hype was justified. Wild makes you want to lace up your boots and go outside and walk it off and let some things go. Before we leave the PCT behind, I want to mention that there's a lot more information available now than when she set out on her hike. One of the most interesting resources I found is a site called Halfway Anywhere. Each year they survey people who've completed the trail, and they ask everything from what gear did you use to what gear do you wish you'd used?
Good one.
To what was your lowest moment, and do you have any advice for future hikers? It is honest and detailed and sometimes scary and sometimes funny. I loved reading about people's advice for walking the trail and the gear. Turns out I can covet gear for something I am not involved with at all. And all of that information completely confirmed my decision to not hike the PCT. Your results may vary, but that's a great read. This book, It's Wild, From Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail by Cheryl Strayed.
Book 3.
My second recommendation is A Superior Death by Nevada Barr. This book is part of a mystery series starring an intrepid park ranger and investigator named Anna Pigeon. She's an excellent character, very firmly in the tradition of detectives who have a solid ethical core, but are driven by the broken parts inside them.
I think that's my favorite kind of detective.
Yeah, it's definitely the best kind of detective.
Yeah.
In her case, she left New York City after her husband was killed, and she's wrestled with alcoholism. She also has a complex but loving relationship with her sister, an accomplished psychiatrist. Their phone calls to each other are lovely. Anna is simultaneously courageous, vulnerable, and physically resilient. One of the things I love about her is that she's hyper capable on the job. She can hike for hours, drive a boat, dive deep into a lake, fire a gun, full-on action stuff. But she's not invincible. She also routinely gets into life and death scrapes that feel like they could go either way. Anna is loosely based on Nevada Barr, the author. She was a park ranger before she became a best-selling author.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. In my imagination, Anna Pigeon is Sandra Bullock.
Okay.
The first book in this series was published in 1993. It won the Agatha Award and the Anthony for Best First Mystery. And that success led to 18 more titles. So you can really get into it if you want to get into it.
Yeah.
Each one takes Anna to a different U.S. national park. Carlsbad Caverns, Ellis Island, Lassen Volcanic National Park, Acadia in Maine, Glacier in Montana. She ping-pongs all over the United States. And the mysteries she solves rise out of the history and landscape of each location. They could only happen there.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good trick.
It is a really good trick. So for this episode, I chose the second book in the series, A Superior Death. There are two reasons I picked this one. First, it's set in Isle Royale National Park. Nevada Barr's first ranger job was on a boat patrol there. And I thought it would be fun to go back to her start.
Yeah.
And second, I'd never heard of Isle Royale National Park. Do you know it?
No.
It's a collection of 400 islands in Lake Superior.
Oh. Huh.
Near Michigan. It's home to all manner of animals: moose, timber wolves, loons, beavers, red foxes, plus historic lighthouses and a famous shipwreck. One of the benefits of having Anna move from park to park is that she experiences each one as a newbie, so we do too. They're really evocative descriptions of nature that kind of revel in how beautiful it is and acknowledge that it could kill you. So here's an example that gives you a sense of the landscape and Anna's character all at once. Hoping to combat fear with knowledge, she'd spent her first 2 weeks as North Shore Ranger, creeping about, chart in one hand, boat wheel in the other, her head hanging out of the window like a dog's from a pickup truck. She'd memorized the shape of every bluff, every bay, the location of every shoal and underwater hazard. Like most landlubbers, she was less afraid of shallow waters than she was of deep, although the brutal cold of Superior would drown her a quarter of a mile from shore just as mercilessly as it would 10 miles out. Anna seldom came in from open water without a sense of returning to safety. Safe harbor, a phrase she'd heard bandied about since childhood, had been given a depth of meaning with Lake Superior's first angry glance.
That really quickly took me back to being on the Great Lakes.
I mean, Lake Superior, like standing on the shore is like looking at the ocean.
Michigan, too. I mean, all of the Great Lakes, you can't see the other side, so they look enormous, and some of them are fierce.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in real life, deep in Lake Superior is the wreck of the SS Kamloops, a freighter that sank with all hands in 1927. It was lost to time, and then 50 years later, it was discovered lying on its starboard side at the bottom of an underwater cliff. So now, today, it's a dangerous, very technical dive site in the lake that's very compelling to hardcore divers. Just to make it extra creepy, there are still remains of 5 sailors aboard the ship, preserved by the cold water.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Huh. So you dive down there, and it's cold and dark.
Yes.
And then you're throwing the light of your flashlight around, and you see the remains of these guys who've been refrigerated for the last 100 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
In the book, they're described as translucent as wraiths.
Jeez.
But that's all real life. All of that really happened.
Yeah.
So, back to the novel.
Okay.
After a recreational dive to the wreck, 2 vacationers return topside and tell the tale of seeing 6 bodies down there.
Oh.
You might remember I said there's 5.
Yeah, that's an extra 1 there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So soon, Anna and her team realize they've got a murder on their hands, and there are plenty of suspects.
Somebody who's very clever about hiding a body, too.
Mm-hmm. In addition to that, massive mystery.
Yeah.
In a place that's very hard to get to investigate.
Yeah.
They've also got a missing person, a super aggro park ranger, a troubled teenager, raucous families on holiday, and rumors about the mythological Wendigo prowling the woods.
Okay.
So one of the things that's really cool is that there's always a main case that they're investigating, but you also get a look at what park rangers are juggling on a day-to-day basis, because there are hundreds or thousands of people visiting these parks, getting into all kinds of mischief.
Sure.
The book cooks along at a really good pace, and there's plenty of action and danger. And the big showdown when it happens was super tense. I was like, I had my hand on my chest while I was reading it the whole time, like over my heart.
Yeah.
I read my first Anna Pigeon book way back in 2000, and I was a little trepidatious to see how they would hold up. And I really love this. I mean, they don't use cell phones for everything, but other than that, it held together really well.
Yeah.
It's a cracking good mystery. And Anna is a very human badass that it's fun to spend time with. I recommend the whole series in general, but you could start with this one. Just this month, it was announced that Anna Pigeon is coming to the screen.
Oh, that's fun.
USA Network is developing a series.
With Sandra Bullock?
I can only hope. Until that airs, you can read all of these books. There are 19 of them. This one is A Superior Death by Nevada Barr.
Here's book 4.
My second book is A Walk in the Park, the true story of a spectacular misadventure in the Grand Canyon by Kevin Fedarko. The Grand Canyon is one of the most visited national parks in the United States, Every year, millions of people snap their selfies on the rim and marvel at the view and maybe hike a little into the trail. And if you're big into it, you might ride a mule for a while or take a raft trip down the Colorado. But fewer than 24 people have ever walked the trail end to end.
That should give you some indication that maybe not the greatest idea.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So there's no marked path. There are no reliable water sources.
Oh.
Yeah. There are no trail angels offering granola bars or words of encouragement or first aid kits.
Mm-hmm.
It's just miles and miles, like hundreds of miles of unmarked, brutal, jagged rock and sheer cliffs and flash flood zones and desert wilderness.
I know you guys can't see me, but I am shaking my head no very vigorously.
And the few people who have done it are a special breed. They are extreme athletes or hardcore desert rats or a team of all of that. Early in the book, Federico quotes a ranger who says, quote, "Off-trail hiking is unique to the Grand Canyon and it requires a honed set of skills." So the ranger's saying not only do you have to have skills, but you have to have skills that are specific to the Grand Canyon. And then she says a thing that reverberates through the book. She says, quote, "It is not possible to hike the length of the canyon off the couch." She didn't say only an idiot would try that, but the words it's right there.
Yeah.
Right? And that's all hanging in the air. And then the door swings open and in walks the author, Kevin Federico, and his buddy, photographer, Pete McBride. Hello. It's not that they don't have any skills. Federico was a river guide for a while, and McBride specializes in outdoor journalism. But long-distance desert hiking?
Yeah.
Not so much. Still, they managed to convince National Geographic to let them take this on. They pitch it as a story about conservation, about the threats facing the Grand Canyon from tourism and mining and development. And it is that. But the heart of the story is a lot more personal. It's a story about friendship and finding humility and failing spectacularly and getting back up. And it's about falling in love with a place so hard that you're willing to sacrifice over and over and over again. I walked into this book with that setup thinking, dumbasses, why would you do that? I got over it mostly because Federico is thinking the same thing, right? There are footnotes in this book. They tend to be funny. At one point, Federico quotes McBride as saying, "Dude, we can do this thing off the couch." And then he follows it up with this fantastic footnote. In the interest of accuracy, balance, and maintaining my friendship with Pete, I'm compelled to disclose that he takes exception to the manner in which we have been depicted up to now. He points out that during the months and weeks prior to the start of our hike, we went to great lengths to plan for this project, efforts that included researching our route, courting sponsors, purchasing gear, planning menus, packing food caches, and arranging our permits with the National Park Service, pouring in so much energy and care that it is unfair to suggest, as I do in these pages, that we were behaving frivolously and irresponsibly, because it will invite readers to mistakenly conclude that we were a pair of incompetent ding-dongs who deserve to be treated like piñatas. Some of this may be true. My own view, however, is that despite these measures, he and I were unforgivably derelict in the area that mattered most, which was our duty to cultivate the experience and judgment that are prerequisites for responsibly traversing the length of the canyon. Those fundamentals can only be acquired slowly and patiently over a period of not weeks or months, but years, and by investing the resource we were least willing to expend, which was our time. Because of that, we were guilty of both hubris and negligence, and thus deserve, at least in this stage of our journey, a certain amount of mockery and disdain, especially me. And in addition to all of that, I just like the story better when it's told this way. So Federico...
I love a long footnote.
Yeah, I do too. So Federico writes about the Grand Canyon not just as a landscape, but almost like this mythic supernatural being, right? It is huge and living and breathing and so indifferent to your suffering and capricious and also gorgeous and spiritual and transcendent and sublime. And the book also touches on the complicated history of the canyon. It plays a sacred role for indigenous communities like the Havasupai and the Hopi and the Navajo. There are environmental threats from uranium mining and massive tourism developments. The Colorado River, which was once wild and free and carved the Grand Canyon, has been dammed and tamed almost out of existence. Federico and McBride's journey becomes kind of a protest and a testimony. And somehow in the middle of all that weight, the book is funny, right? It's these two guys bicker and they make terrible decisions and they pack way too much gear and they forget the sunscreen. They forgot their sunscreen. They crawl through bushes and they fall down cliffs and they get chased by wild cattle. And through it all, you're right there with them.
Did they also try to feed the rock squirrels?
I don't remember mention of the rock squirrel. The New York Times and the Washington Post and Outside Magazine have all praised Federico's storytelling. This book is already being called one of the great adventure memoirs of our time. If you are curious about it, I absolutely recommend it. It's A Walk in the Park, the true story of a spectacular misadventure in the Grand Canyon by Kevin Federico.
And now book 5.
My final recommendation is Devolution by Max Brooks. This book is completely different than anything else we talked about today. The full title is Devolution, a first-hand account of the Rainier's Sasquatch Massacre.
It's a Bigfoot book.
It's a horror novel. And I say horror novel.
Yep.
And it is.
Yep.
But this book is also about environmental issues and capitalism and our reliance on technology and how social order is established and breaks down.
Awesome.
And then there are spectacular, deadly Bigfoot raids. And a hero who rises up to try to save the day.
Okay.
Also, it's epistolary.
Oh, nice.
The core of the story is a diary.
So we've got kind of a National Parks meet Jurassic Park meet World War Z thing happening.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly that. So let me give you the outline of the plot so we can get to the meaty stuff.
Okay.
A group of people move into a smart home community called Green Loop. It's built in the shadow of Mount Rainier, which, by the way, is a volcano.
Right.
In real life, Rainier is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world.
Isn't Rainier visible from Seattle?
Yes. Put a pin in that.
Okay.
The Green Loop settlement is the brainchild of a character who's like a more benevolent Elon Musk or a more nature-oriented Steve Jobs. He sees this community as one that lives in harmony with nature while taking advantage of high-tech privilege. A group of 11 strangers, all with their own secret reasons to be there, are living in this would-be paradise. And then Mount Rainier erupts. And their man-made Shangri-La is cut off from the rest of the world. Then the Bigfoot show up.
Okay.
And that's really all I can say, or it will spoil the fun.
All right.
The author of this book is Max Brooks, whose name you might recognize because he wrote the best-selling Zombie Survival Guide and, as you already mentioned, World War Z.
Yeah.
He's really good at using horror tropes to comment on serious topics. So even though it's 100% accurate to describe devolution as a Sasquatch slasher story, it's more literary than that without sacrificing any fun. Here are 3 reasons I enjoyed this book. 1, the characters. This is a classic setup, a gathering of mismatched strangers all stuck with each other. When you're first meeting the characters, it almost feels like a golden age crime story because you're just being introduced to, you know, the couple in their 60s who are vegan and really want everyone to know it.
Yeah.
And a lesbian couple, both psychologists, with a weird power dynamic and an adopted daughter caught in the middle. A pretentious male author, an older glass artist that has a very witchy vibe and a mysterious past. And then the founders, the tech guru, who I already told you about, and his wife, a model turned yoga teacher who's very much in the mold of Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop. And then our narrator is Kate. Her therapist has advised her to keep a diary to manage her anxiety. So Kate dutifully chronicles her nature walks and observations about the other Green Loop residents, and then later, details of the Bigfoot encounters.
Right.
Her diary reads like a person actually wrote it. I mean, hats off to Max Brooks. It's raw and vulnerable. She's very fragile when we meet her. When everything goes wrong, she starts to reveal a tough inner core that was surprising, but awesome. And then Mostar, the artist, is enigmatic and endearing at the same time. If you're a reader of the Inspector Ganache books by Louise Penny, Mostar reminded me of Ruth, the poet of the Village of Three Pines. The second thing I love is the epistolary format. Kate's journal entries put you right there inside this unfolding mystery. And then in addition to her diary, we get interviews with her brother and a National Park Service ranger. There are news reports and actual research on Bigfoot and excerpts from Teddy Roosevelt's 1893 memoir, The Wilderness Hunter. So it all has a veracity that sent me to Google several times to figure out what's real and what's not. In an interview, Max Brooks said that he's been a lifelong Bigfoot fan, so he knows all of the lore. And what he wanted to do was investigate primate behavior and then apply that to cryptids to make the story feel very real.
Yeah.
The third awesome thing about this book is the setting, or actually the two settings. First, there's Mount Rainier. We see it through Kate's eyes. Here's a little bit. Mount Rainier is out of a storybook. The white peak rising in the distance, the morning light turning its snow an orange pink. You'd expect a princess to live in a castle on the summit or an angry dragon to sleep under its base. It sounds crazy, but I feel strangely safe every morning when I see Rainier, like it's watching over us. I know the tremors we've been feeling are coming from the mountain, but I can't reconcile them with this protective giant ruling all he surveys. And then there's Green Loop, the too good to be true community. It's powered by solar panels and biofuel generators. They have awesome Wi-Fi connectivity via a single fiber optic cable. Groceries are delivered via Amazon drone from Seattle.
Sure.
And as the sales pitch said before they all moved in, they have the best parts of both an urban and rural lifestyle. Until they don't.
Yeah.
If you like slasher movies or enjoy Michael Crichton's mashup of technology and gore, like Jurassic Park, or you enjoyed Fantastic Land from our episode about amusement parks, I think you'll get a kick out of this one. It's Devolution, a first-hand account of the Rainier Sasquatch Massacre by Max Brooks. I want to also quickly mention that the audiobook is performed by a full cast that includes Max Brooks as a researcher, the brilliant character actress Judy Greer as Kate, Nathan Fillion from Firefly as her brother, Terry Gross as herself.
Wow.
Yeah. Plus Kate Mulgrew, Stephen Weber, and Jeff Daniels.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Hey friends, this is Dave jumping in with a quick programming note. We've had a death in the family, and while we're doing some version of okay, it's understandably knocked us off of our usual rhythm. We are heading back to the U.S. for a few weeks, and honestly, we're not entirely sure when we'll be back behind the mic. That said, we absolutely plan to finish out this season. It might just take us a little longer than we expected. If you'd like updates or want to follow along with what's going on behind the scenes, the best place to do that is our Substack. That's where we'll share any schedule changes or news. Thank you for your patience, your kindness, and for being part of our community. We'll be back with more stories and more good books as soon as we can. Those are 5 books we love set in the U.S. national parks. We know we couldn't cover everything, and we'd really like to hear what you think we missed. If you've got a favorite book or a story of your own about a national park, come join us on Patreon. After every episode, we host a little after-show chat. It's a lovely group of readers who gather to swap stories and share ideas and keep the conversation going. You can join us for just $3 a month, and your support helps us keep making the show. Mel, where are we headed on our next episode?
By popular request from our patrons, We're getting curious about Hong Kong.
Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
American history is full of infamous tales that continue to captivate audiences decades or even hundreds of years after they happened. On the Infamous America podcast, you'll hear the true stories of the Salem witch trials and the escape attempts from Alcatraz, of bank robbers like John Dillinger and Pretty Boy Floyd, of killers like Lizzie Borden and Charles Starkweather, of mysteries like the Black Dahlia and D.B. Cooper, and of events that inspired movies like Goodfellas, Killers of the Flower Moon, Zodiac, 8 Men Out, and many more. I'm Chris Wimmer. Join me as we crisscross the country from the Miami drug wars and Dixie Mafia in the South, to mobsters in Chicago and New York, to arsonists, kidnappers, and killers in California, to unsolved mysteries in the heartland and in remote corners of Alaska. Every episode features narrative writing and cinematic music, and there are hundreds of episodes available to binge. Find Infamous America wherever you get your podcasts.